Hello, and welcome to 5 Things to Know, a Tax Talk Today exclusive. I'm joined today by Erin Collins, National Taxpayer Advocate for the IRS. Erin is often considered the voice of the taxpayer within the IRS and before Congress. Under her leadership, the Taxpayer Advocate Service, an independent organization within the IRS, helps taxpayers resolve their IRS account issues, advocates on behalf of the taxpayers, and works towards systemic change to mitigate taxpayer problems. Erin, on behalf of our viewers, it's my pleasure to welcome you to Tax Talk Today, where IRS representatives and tax industry leaders come together to share their knowledge and experience working with federal tax law. As a career tax practitioner, I've known about the benefits of the National Taxpayer Advocate Service for some time, but not everyone is aware of the assistance provided through the important program. Erin, you joined Taxpayer Advocate Service just last year in March, I believe. Thank you for filling an important role. If you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and what the criteria is to get it for a taxpayer to get Taxpayer Advocate Service to help them.
Sure. So first of all, I really do appreciate Tax Talk Today inviting me to speak today. I do think it's very important on behalf of TAS and our position to get a word out to representatives and get it out to taxpayers. We rely on all of you to help us help taxpayers. So I look at it as a partnership. So thank you for inviting me to speak. So I joined TAS as a National Taxpayer Advocate last March, right at the time that the IRS was shutting down the offices and campuses across the country. So from day one, I've been working with 100% of my employees working remotely. So that's been a unique challenge coming into a leadership role, having all of my folks remote. But we've made it work throughout the year. So prior to joining, I spent 20 years at KPMG. I was leading our IRS controversy practice on the West Coast. So we help taxpayers, everything, I used to say everything but windows. I didn't clean the windows, but I did anything from return issues all the way through IRS controversy. And even back then, KPMG was litigating in tax court. So I actually had a number of cases that we litigated on behalf of taxpayers. So pretty much from soup to nuts. Prior to that, I spent 15 years with IRS counsel. So I had a variety of experience there, from being just a line docket attorney. I had a national position as industry counsel for savings and loans for about 5 years. And then I left as a special trial attorney. So again, kind of soup to nuts coverage. And I do think that's been very helpful and valuable to bring into the NTA role, because like all of you, I have spent a lot of times dealing with what I call the oopses. All the challenges that come up throughout the year when you're dealing with taxpayers. I hate to say I've probably seen almost everything over my 35 years experience. And I do think that that's been very valuable for this position. With respect to TAS, I think a lot of people do not realize that we do not have a dollar limitation. So for example, VITA, TICE, our low income tax clinics, they usually have a dollar cap as to when you could use those facilities and ability to go do VITA. With respect to TAS, we do not have a dollar limitation. We are open to all taxpayers. We represent individuals, partnerships, estates. We've even helped some large corporations with respect to, we've done some tax treaty issues. We've done tentative allowance assistance, trying to get that process through. So truly, it's a wide range. But we do have criteria, case criteria, we call it, in order to come in and have the case accepted by TAS. So we have, in essence, two buckets, what I call economic bucket and systemic bucket. The economic bucket are for those taxpayers who are facing economic harm or an adverse reaction. So, for example, collections is knocking at your door, but you can't pay your rent. You can't put food on your table. You're having trouble. We will help work with you and work with collections on those particular issues. You need your refund in order to make your payments. We've represented companies who needed their money to make payroll. So there's all sorts of issues where if it's an economic issue, we prioritize those cases and we will work those. Our second bucket And in light of COVID, I hate to say probably every taxpayer in the United States qualifies, but please don't have 160 million people rush in because it's systemic. So if you have significant delays of more than 30 days in dealing with the IRS has not responded by the date promised, technically you fit our case criteria. And as I said, affectionately joking, but it's not funny, is I think everyone right now is having those challenges and are experiencing those issues. So we have been inundated with calls, so that's a good thing that people need our services. But please be patient when you reach out to our local taxpayer advocates. They are working their best to try and get all these cases resolved.
And I do appreciate that thought, and I always try to stress to my colleagues and peers that taxpayer advocate service is there for when we really need them, but do everything we can to resolve the issue before, because like the IRS itself, your end of the service is severely underfunded as well, I believe. So you don't have the staff that you need. And I'm sure that you would have triple the staff would still not be enough would still not be enough to satisfy the needs of the requests that come in.
Well, can throw in one best practice when we're dealing with representatives. And again, we represent everyone, including the representatives representing the taxpayers. Think of us as sort of your partner trying to get things resolved. The more information you could give us up front, documentation, think of it like a protest you write to appeals. Here's the issues, here's the facts, here's the documentation. The faster we'll be able to help you resolve the issue for your taxpayers.
Very good point. Very good point. It's interesting that we were given a Taxpayer Bill of Rights, and I know this is something your predecessor had worked on for many, many years before he finally got it, and it actually was codified, but yet we don't really know a lot about it. It's not something that seems to be in the forefront. Can you give us an overview of that?
Sure. So the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, as you said, is key. When you think about our system, it is a voluntary tax system. And in order for taxpayers to perceive it to be a fair system, because I think that does help our voluntary compliance, if people look at the tax administration as being fair and even-handed, the Taxpayer Bill of Rights was specifically designed to let taxpayers know what their rights are with respect to the IRS. So the right to be informed, the right to be heard. I mean, that is an issue that comes up a lot. The right to pay the correct amount of tax. When the IRS comes in and proposes an adjustment, they have a right to push back and make requests. They have right for certainty. One of the things your audience may also want to, focus on is the right to representation. Taxpayers have the right to have their representatives participate throughout the whole process. So that is a right that is fundamental. So again, one of the rights, which is, sort of our mantra, is a fair and just tax system. And that's very important for all taxpayers.
Great. Yes, it is. That's very important. I think that a lot of people feel that the system is working against them a lot of times. So knowing that there is that right is wonderful. Now, as I'm sure you're most aware, everybody is, the last two COVID tax seasons, and I like to use that term COVID tax seasons because these have been certainly challenging for most of us. I think that as practitioners, as well as the taxpayers, well, this has been really great, Erin. Thank you so much for joining us on 5 Things to Know. On behalf of our viewers, I want to thank you again for your service as the IRS National Taxpayer Advocate. Your work in this role has greatly impacted so many taxpayers and tax practitioners. Thanks again. We look forward to having you back on another Tax Talk Today program. Thank you all for watching, and as always, it's been great learning with you. Be sure to join us again on an upcoming Tax Talk Today program.